dark cosmos, stay cosmic.
The Planetary Defense Team started as yet another improvised branch from NASA. It grew over the years, and after the very first alien attack on our planet, it quickly became the most important institution in the world. It became the Planetary Defense Corps, and I was right there in the team of executives leading the changes and expansion of the organization to protect our entire planet from these unknown forces that were suddenly attacking us. But here's the thing. I started as part of the Science and Research Unit. I was never a soldier, a politician, or anything more than a committed astrophysicist that wanted to stay alive, and in the process, learn as much as I could about the forms of extraterrestrial life that were intelligent enough to perform organized attacks against our species. However, as I was forced to admit after my colleagues pointed it out for years, I seemed to have a knack for leadership, defensive strategies, and anticipating the next move of our opponents. So, after the untimely death of the first 2 directors we elected during this extraordinary war, my peers around the executives table of the Planetary Defense Corps appointed me as the director. It was the beginning of a new year, and I was at the head of our best shot at stopping the annihilation of our world. 2 distinct attacks marked the first year of my team as director of the PDC, and prepared me for the most anomalous event in human history. It was January, and the headquarters of the Corps in America were restless under a heavy blanket of snow. But I was on our jet on my way to Australia. I spent most of my time traveling from one targeted location to another, seeing firsthand the results of the attacks. At first, we thought it could be something innocuous enough. The early specimens that crashed on our planet every other month were burnt and wounded after traveling the universe toward us. But they started showing up more and more often, and they were growing stronger, bigger, smarter, and more violent. A few days ago, our satellites detected an incoming invader and determined it would land somewhere in the Pacific Ocean. The entire planet waited, holding their breath as we searched for the creature at the bottom of the ocean. Days later, it burst out of the waters on a beach in Australia. I jumped on our jet along with my team as we activated the state of emergency for the entire country. The Australian Army moved in record time toward the location. It still wasn't enough. The beast was about the size of a 2-story house. It wreaked havoc on the beach, and we estimate that it took about a dozen lives with it. According to security camera footage, the creature looked reptilian despite its silhouette that resembled a great ape, and it was capable of opening its jaw several feet wide and swallowing down 2, even 3 people at a time. The army arrived just in time to scare it away. It was the first damn thing that lived long enough to escape our planet. I had to be very careful with what I told the press, but back in our headquarters, we were able to freely discuss what it meant for us that one of those creatures was capable of showing up, killing our people, and leaving almost unscathed. I would never forget the words of my second-in-command, Captain Travis Oliver.
This means that we aren't dealing with animals merely hunting for food and fighting on instinct.
He did an admirable job at keeping his voice steady, even when it was obvious we were all shaken to our core.
It means we got ourselves an intelligent enemy, capable of adapting, planning, and making split-second decisions for its survival. If it managed to leave, it'll manage to come back. It'll probably be stronger, and it might not come back alone.
If only I had known just how true his words would be. We fought similar incidents for 2 months more. And then we faced the second case that changed my perspective on our extraplanetary rivals. This time, our defensive mechanisms had evolved into satellites that could shoot incoming attacks. But it was also the first time that 3 different entities attacked us at the same time. Our system collapsed, the satellites crashed, and 3 alien creatures landed near the capital of Argentina. The good news is that the army was close, and our jet would land shortly after. We naively thought we stood a chance at defeating them, maybe capturing 1 specimen alive for analyzing it. And yet, those 3 massive beasts, oval-shaped like a gigantic egg with countless tendrils and tentacles protruding from it, opened their jaws. Jesus Christ, it was catastrophic. Hundreds of horrible, wild things crawled out of them. They resembled spiders, the size of small dogs, much faster and deadly strong. The fight lasted about an hour. The army massacred as many monsters as they could, but their number didn't seem to go down. There were too many, too fast and organized to defeat. It was the worst attack we had faced so far. The state of alarm in the entire planet and all around me was the worst it had ever been. I arrived in the South American country right on time to see the worst of it. Captain Oliver asked me,
Director, are you going to order a bombing of the location?
I can't, I told him, gritting my teeth with overwhelming frustration. Look at the coordinates. It's too close to the city. The army is right there. Thousands of people would die.
Shall we order an evacuation?
It's useless. I snapped at him and pointed at the screens. Look close. They aren't just fighting. They are grabbing the soldiers. Hell, they're even pulling people out of their houses to drag them back to the 3 alien bodies we identified first. It's the same strategy again. They're taking people from us. How's the attack going? My right-hand man hesitated, and that was enough for me to know this would be bad news.
We're hitting them, of course we are, but the damage seems to be minimal. The bigger specimens are made of something unyielding, something heavier than anything we are capable of destroying.
It was a nightmare. In the grand scheme of things, compared with other battles in all our history, the casualties weren't that numerous. But the sheer helplessness of it all. I mean, our entire society was devastated afterward. In the following months, the attacks only increased. But so did our resilience. We were at war with an enemy that targeted our entire planet. This time, humanity was a united front. Our armies and scientists worked tirelessly to defend our population, come up with new defensive methods and more powerful weapons. We took many losses, and I was sure that sooner rather than later, I would be cut down from my position as director of the Planetary Defense Corps. I was doing everything in my power to save our world, and I doubted anyone could achieve much more than what we were already doing. But our progress in this war was barely noticeable. We started receiving attacks every day. They hit major cities in Europe and Asia. They landed on the oceans and took the coast of South America by surprise. They kidnapped thousands of people from Africa and North America. Hundreds of thousands of people died. Entire cities were destroyed. Civil wars and protests broke out against passive governments and newly installed dictatorships. We were seriously starting to think it couldn't get worse, until, of course, we were aggressively proved wrong. Summer was coming to a close. It was early in the day, and I was barely arriving at my office when Captain Oliver stepped inside. His trembling hands, and the way he avoided my eyes until the very last second, were terrible signs.
There's a new attack coming,
He said. For the first time, he didn't sound like a soldier. He sounded like a terrified young man. Where will it land? I asked him. I was apprehensive about his nervous demeanor, but I was mostly exhausted and discouraged about our odds in this war. I didn't anticipate the gravity of the situation.
Right here, Emma. That thing is coming directly toward us.
Travis's words shook me to my core. It was obvious we were thinking the same thing. Its destination was not a coincidence.
You have to see it.
He added, and promptly walked out of my office. I followed him along the hallway and into the control room where our team studied the signals from our satellites on a 24/7 schedule. For the first time since I started working as director, the room was perfectly calm. Nobody was moving. They were barely breathing. And they didn't even notice me entering the room. All eyes were on the largest screen at the center of the room. I looked up and studied the results along with everyone else. Captain Oliver was right. The coordinates matched the perimeter of the PDC headquarters. Somehow, that wasn't the worst part of it all. Next to the map on the screen, there was a rudimentary silhouette of an alien specimen currently making its way to our planet. Underneath, we could read the specifications about it that our radars captured. Taller than a 10-story building. Possibly 100 square meters in dimension. Bigger, heavier, and probably much stronger than all the other specimens we've seen before put together. A mothership. That gargantuan monstrosity looked big enough to exterminate our country, if not the entire world. Our satellites would try to shoot it, but I could already tell they wouldn't be able to make a dent in its armor. It was horrifying, but figuring out a plan of attack wasn't all that difficult. This time it was obvious. I had little hope it would work, but at the very least, I knew what to do. Worst case scenarios had been discussed for years already. I just didn't think I'd be the one to make it happen. That thing will take several hours to arrive on our planet, I said. At first, my voice was slightly shaky, but as I continued to give orders and the people around me stood taller and prepared to listen, then my courage strengthened. We are going to evacuate the area as fast as possible. The entire state, if we can manage it. I want every single emergency alert activated on the planet. Warn the United Nations immediately. Strongly suggest that the leaders of every nation declare a state of emergency and send the entire population to the shelters we have prepared around the globe. Give them 2 hours to comply. If not, send the message worldwide. Make it as pressing as possible. And let's hope the people will listen. And then as soon as that thing is close enough, we're going to... God damn it, we're going to activate the nuclear weapons. They are our last resource, but this is the worst we've ever seen. This is it. We fight with everything we have. There was an ominous silence reigning in the room after I stopped talking. But nobody protested my decision. Everyone got to work. We had to be quick, efficient, and decisive. I moved to the largest conference room. I had a lot to discuss with the executives of the Planetary Defense Corps, and I expected calls from every world leader coming in the next minutes. We were facing a threat big enough to exterminate our species if we let it. And yet, the greatest shock was yet to come. 2 hours later, when the evacuation was in full swing and the shelters around the world were opening up, my meeting, which very well could have been the last one we got to have, was interrupted. Captain Travis Oliver entered the room with the last 2 remaining workers of the control room. Everyone that was partially essential to the operation had joined the evacuation process. This small team looked unsettled, but not as worried as I saw them when they delivered the big news.
Director, we have important news.
The captain informed me.
Our satellites detected a new invader. A smaller specimen, maybe even similar to ones we've seen before, but it came from the Mothership approaching our planet. It looks like they sent out some sort of a scout. It's approaching our location at the fastest speed recorded for an alien attacker.
I took a deep breath and considered our odds. This was unusual, and nothing good could possibly come from it. But I had my hands tied dealing with the much bigger threat. You said it might be a specimen we've dealt with before, right? I addressed the captain. Well then, send the best of our troops to deal with it as fast and efficiently as they can. At the first sign of something unusual or particularly alarming, let me know. My mind was running wild with possibilities. The minor attacker could be a bomb, could spread a virus, could start a fire, could deliver an army of millions. How was I supposed to expect that fucking thing would land on our planet talking? 30 minutes later, I was running out of the building, accompanied by pretty much everyone still present in the state after the evacuation. Our soldiers had a nearly perfect barricade around the alien. I could see the smoke still lingering in the air after the creature dropped on our grounds at full speed. I made my way through the crowd of soldiers forcefully. Everyone else was completely silent and still. I could hear one completely unfamiliar voice rising loudly as if coming from a set of speakers. I was breathing raggedly and stumbling against heavily armed soldiers. I couldn't even see the alien yet, but I was listening to those unmistakable, clear, prophetic words. "Do not attack," said the seemingly female voice that was heavily distorted. "Do not attack the incoming visitor. We come in peace. We come to negotiate. Do not attack. If the visitor dies, your planet will be destroyed. We want to negotiate. Stand still and wait for our ambassador. Do not attack." When she was done, there were a few seconds of silence before the speech started all over again. Same pitch, exact same words and tone. It was like a recording. I reached the edge of the crowd of soldiers and I was able to take a good look at the unwanted guest, the so-called scout that the captain pointed out. This one was almost familiar. It looked like what we recognize as a giant squid, although the tentacles were more numerous and oddly short. It wasn't moving or attacking us in any way. It was only repeating the words it was given for us. I turned to face the general standing beside me and told him, "Completely annihilate this creature. I want this scout dead." The soldiers waited until the rest of us had retreated to a barely safe distance away before they started their attack on the alien scout. The message delivered by the interdimensional beast felt like it hung in the air long after it was wiped out. Whatever sent it to this planet ahead of its own arrival had sent it to its certain death. Could we seriously negotiate with a creature like that? The next few hours were undoubtedly the most intense that any of us had ever lived. We couldn't let the news of the messenger spread around the world. Too many people knew about it already. Everyone had an opinion, and hardly any of them agreed on something. The stakes couldn't be higher. The clock was ticking, and an inhumane amount of pressure was resting on my shoulders. The decision wasn't exclusively mine. I could be persuaded. I could be forcefully taken off my position if the rest of the PDC didn't agree with my decision. Anything could happen. Finally, the time arrived. The mothership was close enough to our atmosphere that we could fire nuclear weapons. If we were lucky, and that thing was weaker than its size suggested, we would save ourselves. If it didn't work, we were irredeemably doomed. But I was hung up on the part of the message we received.
If the visitor dies, your planet will be destroyed.
This was enough to suspect this terrible monster wasn't the last of its kind. Even if we eradicated this one, we were lost. Maybe negotiation really was our best bet.
And if it isn't?
Captain Oliver asked me as soon as I shared my thoughts with the rest of the team.
What if it's a trick, Emma? What if that thing attacks us as soon as it lands?
I shrugged. My decision was already made. I told them, "We will use nuclear weapons then." Travis gasped and choked on a hysterical laugh.
You'd kill all of us. You could wipe half of the country. It's insane.
It's our very last resource. We have to try everything else first, including negotiating. We will fight until the very last minute before using them. Now, the jet is available and prepared to move everyone to a safe location. Everyone that wants to leave is completely welcome to do so. I am our ambassador. I will do the negotiations. The next following hours were like a dream. Not even a full-on nightmare, because it lacked the urgency of one. I suppose it was the calm before the storm. If I closed my eyes, it almost felt like I was connected to the entire planet. Most of the human population had to be locked up underground in bunkers. All the world leaders either immediately agreed with me or eventually gave up trying to change my mind. They had their weapons ready, but they were also hiding in the most secure bunkers in the world. At the Planetary Defense Corps headquarters, more people jumped on the jet to leave, even some of the soldiers. Almost everyone that had a family chose to leave. Almost everyone that lost a family member to the alien attacks chose to stay. The final moment was approaching, and I felt like I had transcended the ultimate level of fear and reached a state of indescribable peace. I wasn't anxious. I wasn't angry or sad. Mostly, I think I had accepted that, even in the best possible scenario, it was very likely that I would die in the next couple of hours. That didn't make me reckless, though. The detachment from my own safety only made me more hyper-focused on doing whatever I had to do to guarantee the safety of everyone on this planet that still had any chance of survival. When we got to the time of arrival, we waited inside the building for safety. The creature landed behind our headquarters in the wide, empty stretch of land where we last saw the jet depart. It brought with itself a giant cloud of smoke and dust. When the air settled, we reluctantly and with faked confidence made our way outside. I was accompanied by 8 members of the PDC and only a few dozen soldiers that wouldn't have stood a chance against even smaller specimens. When we looked up at our visitor, we had to lean on each other to stay upright and not fall on our knees at the enormity of the threat. The colossal creature looked much bigger than any numbers could have prepared us for. At first, that thing looked like a very irregular cubical form. There was dark smoke coming off the top of it, and I believed even some ice clinging to its surface. But then it started to change. It was stirring. The sounds were truly sinister, like ancient bones breaking, like the very foundations of the world shifting, and the ground started to shake underneath our feet as the monster moved. Its limbs were loosening, peeling back from the core of its body. The beast stretched its giant legs. 6, as far as I could count, each one covered by a thick gray exoskeleton reminiscent of Earth's crustaceans and about 30 feet long. The contraction of the creature untangling limbs and tails to the sound of cracking skulls was revolting. But it only got worse when its enormous jaws started to open. The monster yawned like a god that had slumbered for a millennia. Gray fog flew out of the freshly opened cavities. There were 3 visible mouths slowly opening. At the sides, 2 horizontal mouths were lined up with a dozen of copper-colored fangs about the size of a truck each. The mouths were big enough to rip apart half of our headquarters building in one bite. But the vertical mouth creaking open at the front of the creature, that was an infernal portal opening right before our eyes. It was a fissure in the face of this alien. The lips separated themselves slowly, dripping a thick, dark substance that looked more like black lava than an animal's saliva. The teeth of that area were different, sharp as knives, and too many to count, lined up in rows like a shark's. As the mouth continued to open, I could see thick, heavy tendrils like ropes linked from one side to the other. It looked like the roots of a carnivore plant, a tangle of exposed veins, an indestructible spiderweb. The entryway to hell. I knew we didn't make a very impressive group. I could have bet that most of the people around me were wide-eyed and open-mouthed. Maybe crying, possibly running away, or even pissing their pants. Everything in front of us was terrifying. But the real shock, the biggest surprise came when we saw a person standing in the mouth of the beast. Initially, there was a light, blinding at first, and then merely warm. It came from the insides of the alien, and I didn't pretend to guess how its body was capable of that. Then we saw a strange appendage creep out of the mouth facing us. I compared that awkward piece of bone and cartilage with a set of stairs. Then we finally saw it. Her. There was a human silhouette illuminated in the mouth of the monster. It walked slowly toward us, with the posture of royalty, and opened her mouth to speak. I thought we were too far away from her to listen, but then the words came at us like a storm, directly from the gargantuan mouth of the beast. They communicated as one.
Hello, people of the earth. Thank you for following the instructions and welcoming me into your planet.
She said through the booming, distorted voice of the alien.
Come closer and see me. Step forward without fear. At the moment, I just want to talk. Let us have a civilized conversation for once. Please.
If we had made it that far, I thought we might as well embrace our current circumstances. At my signal, my group, the last army standing, composed of less than 100 people, started walking toward the alien. As we closed the distance, we noticed more and more details about our enemy. The exoskeleton was made of a material far superior to anything on this earth. We accurately guessed our bullets wouldn't even scratch it. Soon enough, I was able to make out the specific features of the woman that came out of the gray, gooey insides of this gigantic beast. She had dark hair, and I would have liked to say her green eyes lacked soul and life, but they were actually striking. She had a passionate gaze. Her body was almost entirely covered by animal furs, remnants of specimens from a faraway planet that got turned into boots, a long coat with a hood, and loose pants. She was equipped with 2 items, and both seemed to be made of bone or something from the monster's exoskeleton. One of these mysterious weapons was strapped to her back, and the other one she held like a cane as she stood at the top of the stairs and held out a hand toward us. "Send your own ambassador. We have much to discuss." I didn't tremble when I heard the voice. Now that I could see I was dealing with a human instead of the enormity of the creature that brought her here, I felt more confident. When I started walking forward, nobody tried to stop me. Stepping on that set of stairs, made out of the body of an alien, was incredibly strange. But to be fair, it only felt like metal. The real unsettling parts were up ahead of me. I could smell the scent of this monster, a mixture of coal and something sharp, like chlorine. When I reached the top, the ambassador stepped to the side so we could face each other. All of my sternness met her dangerous amusement, and she offered me a hand. "You can just call me Ambassador." I was disgusted by the mere idea of touching her, but steeled myself and gripped her hand tightly and introduced myself, saying, "Emma Barnett, Director of the Planetary Defense Corps." My rival nodded slowly and then said, "So, you're the one I should blame for my kidnapping by alien monsters." I pulled my hand back and widened my eyes. I expected the worst. I thought she'd kill me instantly. But then it hit me. If she was their ambassador, she wasn't meant to show resentment to the entities she served. We heard a deep growl from the depths of this monster, as if it heard her bitterness. "Never mind," she said quickly. "Let's go. We have a lot to talk about." I had no choice but to follow her inside the body of the beast. We walked on the firm, only slightly viscous surface of the alien's insides. The walls around us were bloody muscles, exposed bones, viscous spots, and scattered teeth that were part of an anatomy I had no hopes of understanding. Then she started explaining. You see, Emma Barnett, you're clearly fighting creatures much stronger than anything this pathetic little planet can come up with. But we can admit this. We aren't smarter. The original creatures only know to explore the universe, land on random planets, eat, destroy, and kidnap. And what's the point of taking hostages? Connection. Collaboration. It's difficult to explain if you haven't experienced it firsthand, but these so-called aliens are capable of linking themselves to our brains. Choose one of us for each of them. Offer transport and protection in exchange of a superior intelligence to make the decisions for them. No language necessary. Spare me the details, I said. I have no interest in knowing about the corrupted thoughts of someone that works for the enemy. She chuckled bitterly. What part of us being smarter and in complete control? Didn't you understand? So, you and others like you are responsible for the attacks on your own planet? This isn't our planet anymore. No shit it isn't. You're traitors. You betrayed your home and your entire species. Watch your tone. This time, when the ambassador snapped, she took a step back and raised her cane between us, pointing directly at my throat. I gulped nervously, stepped backward, and slowly raised my arms as a sign of surrender. I'm going to be very clear with you now, the woman spoke slowly and firmly. If I die, if I'm hurt in any way, the entire species will feel it. They will come for revenge, and the Earth will be destroyed. But you will be saved on one condition. We want 1,000 people to take back to our planet to join our community. You will comply, and you won't try to pull off any tricks. I still remember humanity. I know millions of you will jump at the chance to abandon this doomed little rock and come with us. One last thing. For the sake of diplomacy, they will need a convincing leader. You could fight, and I could kill you, and pick the next in line until I find one that takes the deal. You're disposable. We all are. The point is, you aren't walking out of this creature alive, Emma. I closed my eyes for a moment. I needed to think. I had to come up with a way out. A way to use this one opportunity to put an end to the war. I had to find a way to use this woman and the two weaknesses I noticed in her. Resentment and a lack of self-worth. What if you could leave this creature, though? I asked her. What if, after all, I could save you? Don't you miss individuality, independence, being indispensable and irreplaceable, and being more than an ambassador, having a name that's only yours? Stay here. Let the world treat you like a savior, spoil you like a queen, and help us end this war. She had only spent a few months away from home. She couldn't be so brainwashed to deny this tempting offer. When I saw her hesitating and hold on to her cane wavering, I dealt my most convincing point. We will send 1,000 people with an ambassador to appease the enemy and buy us some time. But you know them. You can help us. You said so yourself. We aren't stronger, but we are smarter. You are smarter than this, and you know you should do the right thing. The tension in the air was suffocating. This could be the end for me, or the beginning of the end of this interplanetary war. The weight of 2 different planets and 2 different species was hanging in between us, until the ambassador dropped her weapon and offered me her hand one more time. We had a deal. Hey, sci-fi horror fans. It's Teresa. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to give it a thumbs up and leave a comment. And remember, stay cosmic.